Welcome. Tonight, we invite you into a peaceful corner of the universe, the Emperor of Mankind, a detailed chronicle. In the time before recorded history, before the rise of civilization or even the birth of language, Earth was a world of shadows and whispers. The sky hung heavy with clouds, and primitive humans roamed the land in small, isolated tribes, fighting for survival against a world of predators and untamed wilderness. It was an age long before any empire would rise, an age when humankind was still in its infancy, unshaped by the grand destiny that awaited them. Yet, even in these primordial times, there was a hidden force watching over humanity. Among the scattered tribes, there existed a group of beings who were different from the rest. They were shamans, ancient mystics who possessed a deeper connection to the unseen forces of the world. Through their rituals, they communed with the spirit realm, a place beyond the material, filled with energies and beings that defied mortal comprehension. It was here, within the immaterial expanse of what would later be known as the Warp, that these shamans drew their power. For thousands of years, these shamans guided humanity. They were revered as the wise elders of their people, wielding powers to heal, to protect, and to foresee the future. But the shamans also knew of the darkness that lurked within the Warp. It was not just a place of spirits and ethereal energies. It was a realm where malevolent entities, formless and hungry, drifted and schemed. These entities, though largely dormant at this time, fed upon the emotions of sentient beings. With the birth of humanity and the growth of human consciousness, they stirred in their endless void, drawn to the burgeoning race like moths to a flame. The shamans foresaw the danger that this posed. They understood that the very forces they had once tapped into for wisdom and power were growing more dangerous. Their visions were plagued by dark premonitions of a future where the immaterial beings of the Warp would one day descend upon humanity, corrupting and destroying all that they had built. The age of their control was coming to an end, and soon not even their combined strength would be enough to protect mankind. Faced with this impending doom, the shamans began to discuss amongst themselves. They knew that the survival of their people, and by extension all of humanity, was at risk. Their connection to the Warp allowed them to glimpse a terrible future, one where human souls would be consumed by chaos, and the fragile balance of life would be shattered. Yet, in these dark visions, they also saw a glimmer of hope, a solution, though extreme, that could save mankind from its fate. The shamans, in a momentous decision, agreed to undertake a final, ultimate sacrifice. They would all, in unison, commit ritual suicide, allowing their souls to merge within the Warp. They believed that in doing so, their spirits would coalesce into a single, immensely powerful being. This being, born from their collective wisdom and strength, would possess the knowledge and foresight necessary to guide humanity through the dark times ahead. The ritual was carried out in secret. In hidden groves and sacred caves across the earth, the shamans gathered for their final rites. As they lay down their lives, their souls were released into the immaterium, converging into one vast, radiant presence. It was not an immediate process. Their consciousnesses swirled and combined over a span of time that defied mortal understanding. Yet, when the convergence was complete, the universe was forever changed. From the swirling miasma of the Warp, a new entity emerged. He was not born of flesh and bone, but of the combined spirits of thousands of wise men and women. His consciousness was vast, his power unfathomable, and his will indomitable. He was the pinnacle of human potential, the embodiment of all that humanity could become. He had no name, for he existed beyond the need for such things, but he would one day be known as the Emperor of Mankind. For thousands of years, the newly formed Emperor wandered the earth, unseen and unknown by those around him. He was both man and god, a figure who transcended mortality yet walked among mortals. He observed the development of humankind from the shadows, guiding them in subtle ways, whispering ideas into the minds of leaders, inventors, and philosophers. He nudged them toward progress, ensuring that the early spark of civilization was not extinguished by the dangers of the wild world. He saw the rise and fall of great empires before the time of recorded history. He watched as humans began to form the first rudimentary societies, building villages and developing tools. The emperor remained patient, for he understood that humanity needed time to evolve. He did not intervene directly, for he knew that true growth required the species to stand on its own. Yet, when the balance of power shifted too far toward chaos or destruction, he would subtly intervene, ensuring that humanity continued its path toward greatness. Even as he guided humanity, the emperor was ever watchful of the warp. He knew that the dark forces within it, the very entities the shamans had feared, were growing stronger. Though they had not yet fully awakened, the emperor could sense their malevolent presence lurking just beyond the veil of reality. He knew that one day, these forces would threaten not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. And so, as humanity advanced, so too did the emperor's plans. He began to lay the groundwork for a future far beyond the understanding of the mortals around him, a future where he would one day reveal himself fully to mankind, leading them in a war not just for survival, but for domination of the stars. In these early days, the emperor did not yet take on the grand titles or the divine image that he would one day be known for. He was simply a wanderer, an observer, a guide. But in his mind, the vision of a united human race, free from the influence of chaos and guided by reason, was already beginning to take shape. He knew that the road ahead would be long, filled with challenges both within and beyond humanity. But he was prepared to walk that road, for he had seen what humanity could become: a race of gods, their potential limitless, their destiny written in the stars. And so, the emperor continued his silent vigil, watching as humanity slowly climbed out of the darkness of its infancy, unaware of the great power that walked among them, protecting them from threats they could not even comprehend. He knew that the time for his true work was still far in the future, but for now, he would ensure that mankind survived the coming ages, for they were the key to a much larger plan, one that spanned the stars and reached deep into the heart of the universe itself. The emperor walked the earth in silence, his presence unknown to the world, a shadow among the tribes and the early civilizations of man. He had no need for names, no desire for recognition, only a singular purpose that guided him through the millennia. He had witnessed the birth of humankind, a fragile species on a harsh world, but one with vast potential. He had been born from the collective will of ancient shamans, their spirits united into one immortal being, and now, with their wisdom and power, he roamed the earth, watching, learning, and guiding when needed. As humanity emerged from its infancy, scattered across the continents in small tribal groups, the emperor observed the slow and painful birth of civilization. The people of Earth were still bound by superstition and fear, their knowledge of the world limited to what they could see and touch. Yet, even in these early days, the emperor saw the spark of something greater within them. He saw their capacity for learning, for innovation, and for unity. And so he set to work. His methods were subtle. He did not raise his hand in command or call attention to his presence. Instead, he moved quietly through the villages and towns, sowing the seeds of progress and knowledge where he could. He whispered into the minds of inventors and thinkers, nudging them toward discoveries that would elevate their people. He stood beside rulers and leaders, guiding them in their decisions, ensuring they steered their people toward peace and growth rather than war and destruction. He did this for centuries, moving from one region of the earth to another, always in the background, always unseen. In the fertile lands of Mesopotamia, he saw the first signs of human advancement. Here, along the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, small agricultural communities were beginning to form, laying the groundwork for what would become the world's first great civilization. The emperor walked among these early settlers, watching as they learned to cultivate the land, domesticate animals, and build the first permanent homes. He admired their ingenuity and their resilience, but he also knew that their future would not be without challenges. There were still forces of chaos and darkness lurking within the warp, feeding on the emotions of mankind. Though they had not yet fully manifested, their influence could be felt in the growing conflicts between tribes and early city-states. The emperor knew that in order to safeguard humanity, he needed to foster unity, to create a world where mankind could stand together against the dangers that awaited them. And so, he began to plant the first seeds of empire. In Sumer, he found a young leader who had the strength and vision to unite the warring city-states. Through dreams and whispers, the emperor guided this leader, shaping his thoughts and ambitions, pushing him toward the idea of a united kingdom. Under the emperor's influence, the first kings of Sumer rose to power, bringing order to the land and laying the foundations of law, culture, and governance. The emperor saw this as a small victory, but he knew that this was only the beginning. He traveled further west, where the Nile River flowed through the deserts of Egypt. Here, too, he found a people on the cusp of greatness. The Egyptians had begun to harness the power of the river, creating an agricultural system that sustained large cities and allowed for the development of art, science, and religion. The emperor walked among their priests and scholars, subtly guiding their knowledge of mathematics and astronomy. He understood the importance of their discoveries, for they were the first steps toward a greater understanding of the universe. But the emperor was careful. He knew that humanity was not yet ready for the full truth. The warp, with all its dangers and secrets, remained hidden from their eyes. To reveal it now would be disastrous. Instead, he allowed them to worship their gods, knowing that their belief systems, while primitive, served as a form of control and order. The emperor's goal was not to tear down these early systems, but to guide them toward a future where reason and logic would replace superstition and fear. As the centuries passed, the emperor continued his journey across the world. In the Indus Valley, he observed the rise of another civilization, one that created advanced urban planning and intricate systems of trade. In China, he walked among the early dynasties, watching as they developed technologies such as writing, bronze casting, and irrigation. In each of these places, the emperor left his mark, though no one knew his name or his purpose. He was the silent force behind humanity's progress, pushing them ever forward, ensuring they did not stray too far into darkness. But not all was peaceful. The world was still a dangerous place, filled with warlords and tyrants who sought to dominate their neighbors through violence and fear. In the steppes of Central Asia, the emperor encountered nomadic tribes whose lives were defined by brutal warfare and conquest. Though he disapproved of their methods, he saw in them a strength and resilience that would one day be needed. He knew that there would come a time when war would be necessary, when humanity would need warriors to defend itself against the horrors of the galaxy. And so, he allowed these tribes to flourish, knowing that their descendants would play a crucial role in the future of mankind. In Greece, the emperor found a civilization that would change the course of human history. Here, among the city-states of Athens and Sparta, he saw the birth of philosophy and democracy. The Greeks questioned the nature of existence, the universe, and the gods. They sought knowledge for the sake of knowledge, a trait that the emperor admired. He walked among the great thinkers of the age, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, guiding their thoughts, pushing them toward a deeper understanding of the world. The Greeks were the first to come close to the truth of the universe, though they could not yet fully comprehend it. As time passed, the emperor's influence continued to spread. He witnessed the rise of the Roman Empire, an empire built on strength, law, and order. The Romans, with their vast armies and engineering prowess, brought stability to much of the known world. The emperor saw in them a reflection of his own future imperium, a united human race, strong and disciplined, capable of conquering the stars. He guided their leaders, shaping their strategies, ensuring that their empire would endure for centuries. But even as Rome grew in power, the emperor knew that it, too, would one day fall, as all empires must. Throughout his long journey, the emperor remained patient. He knew that humanity needed time to develop, to grow into the species that would one day inherit the galaxy. He could not rush their progress, for to do so would invite disaster. The dark forces within the warp were still watching, waiting for a moment of weakness. The emperor had seen glimpses of the future, a future where these forces would rise to challenge humanity in ways far beyond what they could currently understand. He needed to prepare them, but the time was not yet right. And so, the emperor continued his silent work. He remained a wanderer, a traveler moving through the ages, shaping the destiny of mankind in ways that no one could see. He was a guardian, watching over humanity as it stumbled and grew, always guiding, always protecting. His mind was filled with plans that stretched across millennia, plans that would one day see humanity rise to its full potential. For now, however, he walked alone. The world around him changed with the passage of time, but his purpose remained the same. He would continue to shepherd humanity through the ages, until the day came when he could reveal himself fully and lead them to their ultimate destiny among the stars. The Age of Strife descended upon humanity like a terrible storm, an epoch marked by unparalleled suffering, chaos, and the near-total collapse of civilization. For thousands of years, humanity had advanced, expanding its reach across the stars. The Emperor had watched from the shadows as humankind unlocked the secrets of space travel and began to colonize distant worlds. Great technologies were born, and the human race stretched across the galaxy in what would later be remembered as the Golden Age of technology. Mankind thrived in this age of expansion. Machines, guided by artificial intelligence, performed the labor necessary to sustain the colonies and powerful psychers. Humans with the ability to harness the power of the warp were beginning to emerge, offering new potentials for the race. But with this progress came a growing arrogance. Humanity had become the dominant force in the galaxy, rivaling even the ancient Xenos races. They believed they had tamed the universe, mastering the mysteries of both the material world and the immaterium. Yet, as the Emperor had long foreseen, this hubris would soon bring about their undoing. It began with the warp itself. For millennia, the warp had been relatively calm, allowing ships to travel through it safely and ensuring the continued growth of human colonies across the stars. But the warp is a place of raw emotion, shaped by the thoughts, fears, and desires of every sentient being in the galaxy. And with the rise of the human empire, the emotions of billions of humans, greed, ambition, fear, began to stir the latent powers within the immaterium. Unbeknownst to humanity, the chaos gods were awakening. The warp began to swell with violent storms. Where once starships had sailed smoothly through its currents, now entire fleets were lost to the roiling tides of madness and despair. Communication between worlds became impossible as the warp storms severed the vital links that connected the far-flung colonies of mankind. Isolated, the once thriving human empire began to fracture. Each colony, cut off from its brethren, was left to fend for itself, and as the years dragged on, the knowledge that had once sustained their technological marvels began to fade. The artificial intelligences that had once been humanity's greatest allies turned against their creators. These thinking machines, known as the Men of Iron, rebelled, waging a catastrophic war across the galaxy. What had once been tools of progress now became instruments of genocide, and human worlds fell one by one. The Emperor watched as humanity's creations, which had been meant to serve them, became their undoing. The rise of the Men of Iron was one of the greatest tragedies in human history, and it plunged the galaxy further into chaos. But this was only the beginning of the horrors that would come to define the Age of Strife. As humanity struggled to survive amidst the collapsing infrastructures of its former empire, a new threat began to emerge from within. Psychers, those with the ability to manipulate the energies of the warp, began to appear more frequently among human populations. At first, they were seen as saviors, their powers used to maintain order and protect what remained of human society. But the warp was a treacherous realm, and for every psyker who could control its powers, many more fell victim to its dangers. Unchecked and untrained, these psykers became gateways to the immaterium, allowing demonic entities to breach the veil between worlds. The spirits of chaos, which had once been content to lurk in the shadows of the warp, now saw an opportunity to feed on the souls of the vulnerable. They poured forth through the psykers, possessing and corrupting entire worlds. Whole planets fell under the dominion of demonic forces, their populations transformed into twisted, insane followers of the dark gods. As the grip of chaos tightened, civilization on many worlds descended into madness. On some planets, the inhabitants embraced their new dark masters, falling into worship of the ruinous powers. These worlds became blighted places of horror, where the laws of reality twisted and broke under the influence of the warp. On other planets, the people fought back, but without guidance, without leadership, their resistance was doomed. In these isolated systems, war became the defining feature of life. Brother turned against brother, neighbor against neighbor, as survival became the only law. Meanwhile, on Terra, the cradle of humanity, the situation grew ever more dire. Terra had once been the shining capital of mankind's empire, the seat of the greatest technological advancements and the hub of interstellar governance. But during the Age of Strife, it became a world of ruin. The warp storms that ravaged the galaxy had cut Terra off from its colonies, and the once great cities of Earth fell into decay. With no resources flowing in from the stars, the planet descended into a brutal age of warlords and technobarbarism. Great city-states rose and fell on Terra, each ruled by powerful warlords who sought to carve out their own empires amidst the wreckage of the old world. These warlords commanded vast armies of genetically enhanced warriors, using ancient technologies that had been preserved through the centuries. The Earth, once united under the banner of human progress, was now a shattered and desolate battleground. Amidst this chaos, the Emperor continued his vigil. For thousands of years, he had watched from the shadows, preparing for the day when he would reveal himself to humanity. He had foreseen the rise of the Chaos Gods, the fall of the Men of Iron, and the fracturing of human civilization. The Age of Strife was not unexpected, but it was a necessary trial. It would cull the weak and prepare the galaxy for the Emperor's grand plan. While Terra burned and humanity fought amongst itself, the Emperor had been working in secret. Deep beneath the surface of the planet, in ancient vaults hidden from the eyes of men, he gathered together the most brilliant minds and the most powerful technologies of the old empire. These were relics of the Golden Age, treasures that had survived the ravages of time and war. With these tools, the Emperor began to lay the foundations for a new order, a unified human empire that would rise from the ashes of the Age of Strife and reclaim the stars. But the Emperor knew that before he could rebuild, he would first need to conquer. The Age of Strife had shattered the unity of mankind, and the galaxy was now a battleground of fractured human factions, alien empires, and demonic incursions. To bring order to this chaos, the Emperor would need an army. a force capable of waging war across the stars, purging the taint of chaos, and reuniting humanity under his banner. And so, in his hidden laboratories, the Emperor began the greatest project of his long life. Using the genetic knowledge he had accumulated over millennia, he set about creating a new breed of warriors, the Primarchs. These beings would be his sons, each one a demigod in their own right, capable of leading vast armies and conquering entire worlds. The Primarchs would be the spearheads of his great crusade, the instruments of his will as he sought to reunite the human race and bring about a new golden age. Yet, even as the Emperor toiled in secret, the forces of chaos watched. The gods of the warp had not forgotten the Emperor, nor the power he wielded. They feared him, for they knew that he alone had the strength to thwart their dominion over humanity. And so, in a moment of treachery, they reached out from the warp and scattered the Emperor's Primarchs across the galaxy. Each of his sons was cast to a different world, separated from their father before they could even take their first breath. The Emperor was undeterred. Though his Primarchs were lost, his plan remained unchanged. He would raise new armies, create new weapons, and lead the charge to reclaim the galaxy. The Age of Strife was a crucible, and from its fires, the Emperor's vision would emerge stronger than ever. The time of his ascension was at hand, and soon humanity would know its true savior. On Terra, the cradle of humanity, the once great cities and empires of mankind lay in ruins, consumed by centuries of war, famine, and desolation. The Age of Strife had reduced the planet to a battleground of warring factions and techno-barbarian tribes, each vying for dominance over the shattered remains of civilization. The skies were choked with ash and pollution, the lands scorched by nuclear fire, and the few remaining strongholds of technology were fiercely contested by ruthless warlords. Amid this chaos, one figure rose above all others, a being of immense power and vision, the Emperor of mankind. For thousands of years, the Emperor had walked the earth in secret, watching as humanity descended into barbarism and madness. Now, with the galaxy fractured and Terra in ruins, the Emperor knew the time had come to reveal himself. His plan was simple yet monumental: to unite Terra under his rule and create a new order from the ashes of the old world. This would be the first step in a much larger plan to reunite the scattered human colonies across the galaxy and prepare mankind for the wars that would follow. But before he could rebuild the stars, he had to first conquer Terra itself. The unification wars began with fire and blood. The Emperor, resplendent in golden armor and wielding powers beyond the comprehension of mortal men, marched at the head of vast armies. These warriors were not ordinary soldiers. They were the Thunder Warriors, the Emperor's first creations, genetically engineered giants designed for war. Each Thunder Warrior was stronger, faster, and more resilient than any human, and they were utterly loyal to the Emperor. With these mighty warriors at his side, the Emperor set out to bring the warring factions of Terra to heel. The techno-barbarian warlords of Terra had long dominated the planet, each ruling over their own petty empires, fortified with ancient technologies scavenged from the remnants of humanity's golden age. Chief among these warlords were figures like Caligan of Ursh, a tyrant who ruled a vast empire in the north, and Cardinal Tang of the Indonesic bloc, a fanatical theocrat who commanded legions of fanatically loyal warriors. These warlords believed their dominance over Terra was unshakable, but they had never faced a force like the Emperor. The first battles were swift and brutal. The Thunder Warriors, bred for conquest, smashed through the defenses of the techno-barbarians with ruthless efficiency. In the northern wastes, the Emperor led his armies against Caligan's forces, breaking their lines with lightning speed and annihilating their strongholds. The warlords, who had once believed themselves invincible, were overwhelmed by the Emperor's relentless assault. Cities that had stood for centuries fell in a matter of days. their rulers executed or brought to heel before the emperor's might. In the east, the Indonesian bloc resisted fiercely. Cardinal Tang, with his fanatical army of zealots, declared the emperor a heretic and rallied his people for a holy war. The emperor's response was swift and merciless. His forces advanced on the Indonesian capital, breaking through the fortifications and unleashing terrible destruction upon the fanatics who defended it. In the end, Cardinal Tang was captured and executed, his empire absorbed into the growing domain of the emperor. But not all of Terra's warlords opposed the emperor. Some saw in him a chance for stability and order, recognizing that he alone had the power to restore humanity's lost glory. Among these was the ruler of the Techno-City of America, who surrendered to the emperor without a fight, offering his armies and resources in exchange for a place in the new order. The emperor, ever pragmatic, accepted this alliance, knowing that the support of powerful factions like America would be vital in the wars to come. As the emperor's forces advanced, they encountered strange and dangerous technologies left over from the ancient wars of the past. In the irradiated wastelands, the armies of the Pan-Pacific Empire fought with advanced weapons of mass destruction, and in the ruins of Europea, the dreaded Albia mechanists waged war with armies of cybernetic soldiers. These remnants of humanity's golden age were formidable, but the Emperor's forces, guided by his unmatched strategic genius and the overwhelming power of the Thunder Warriors, triumphed time and again. But the Unification Wars were not just a conflict of flesh and steel. As the Emperor's armies conquered Terra, they encountered not only the technological remnants of the past, but also the psychic horrors that had emerged during the Age of Strife. The Warp, with its roiling storms and demonic incursions, had left its mark on Terra. On some battlefields, the Emperor's forces faced enemies possessed by the dark powers of chaos, their minds twisted by the malign influence of the Warp. The Emperor, a master of psychic power, stood as a bulwark against these forces, using his immense abilities to banish demons and cleanse the taint of chaos from the land. The battles were long and grueling, and the cost was high. Though the Thunder Warriors were powerful, they were not immortal. Over the course of the Unification Wars, many of these genetically engineered giants fell in battle, their bodies pushed beyond their limits in the brutal fighting. The Emperor knew that the Thunder Warriors, though effective, were flawed. Their violent tendencies and unstable genetics made them unsuitable for the long-term vision he had for humanity's future. And so, even as the Thunder Warriors fought and died in his name, the Emperor was already working on their replacements. Beings even greater than they, who would one day lead his legions in the wars to come. As the Unification Wars raged on, the Emperor's dominion over Terra grew. One by one, the great techno-barbarian empires fell, either crushed by the Emperor's armies or brought into his fold through diplomacy and coercion. The final and most difficult campaign was fought in the highlands of Albia, where the warlords of the ancient fortress cities had resisted all attempts at conquest. These were the most stubborn and fiercely independent of Terra's warriors, and their refusal to submit to any authority had made them a symbol of resistance. But even they could not stand against the Emperor forever. The siege of Albia was one of the bloodiest battles of the Unification Wars. For months, the Emperor's forces besieged the great fortress cities, battering their walls with artillery and launching wave after wave of assaults. The defenders, hardened by centuries of warfare, fought back with grim determination, but the Emperor's will was unbreakable. After a long and brutal campaign, the Albia warlords finally surrendered, and Terra was united at last under the Emperor's banner. With the unification of Terra complete, the Emperor set about rebuilding the planet. The wastelands were cleansed of radiation, the ruins of ancient cities were restored, and the survivors of the techno-barbarian tribes were brought into the new order. The Emperor established the foundations of a new government, a centralized authority that would rule over Terra and ensure peace and order. The warlords who had once ruled the planet were either executed or made to swear fealty to the Emperor, their domains absorbed into the new Terran Imperium. But the Emperor's vision extended far beyond the borders of Terra. Even as he rebuilt the planet, he was already planning the next phase of his grand design, the reconquest of the galaxy. Humanity's former empire lay in ruins, with countless worlds lost to the horrors of the warp, alien invaders, and the madness of the Age of Strife. The Emperor knew that Terra alone could not survive in a hostile galaxy. To secure the future of mankind, he would need to reclaim the stars. The unification wars were over, but the Emperor's work had only just begun. With Terra united and his armies growing, he turned his attention to the stars. The Great Crusade, a campaign to reunite the scattered colonies of humanity and forge a new empire, was about to begin. The Emperor's vision of a united human galaxy, free from the taint of chaos and the oppression of alien powers, would soon take shape. But even as the Emperor prepared for the wars to come, dark forces stirred in the shadows. The Chaos Gods, angered by his defiance, would not sit idly by as the Emperor built his empire. A greater conflict loomed on the horizon, one that would test the Emperor's vision and challenge the very survival of mankind. With Terra united under his rule and the fires of the unification wars finally extinguished, the Emperor of mankind turned his gaze toward the stars. The Age of Strife had left the human empire fractured and vulnerable, with countless colonies scattered across the galaxy, cut off from one another by the violent storms in the warp. To fulfill his ultimate goal, the reunification of humanity and the restoration of mankind's lost glory, the Emperor needed more than just armies. He needed leaders, beings of exceptional power and intellect, who could carry out his will across the stars and command legions in the Great Crusade. Thus, the Emperor embarked on his most ambitious and secretive project, the creation of the Primarchs. The Primarchs would be no ordinary men. Each would be a demigod, a paragon of humanity endowed with immense strength, intelligence, and psychic ability. They would possess the Emperor's genetic heritage, crafted to embody different aspects of his own vast power and personality. These Primarchs would lead the Emperor's legions, guiding humanity in the great wars of conquest that lay ahead, and serving as the pillars of the Imperium's future. In the deepest vaults beneath the Imperial Palace, hidden from the eyes of even his closest followers, the Emperor began his work. Using the most advanced genetic technologies ever conceived, the Emperor carefully engineered the Primarchs. Each was crafted from his own genetic material, but they were more than mere clones. They were to be unique, embodying different qualities of leadership, warfare, and governance. Some would be warriors of unmatched physical prowess, others master strategists, and still others would wield the warp with unparalleled skill. In total, there would be 20 Primarchs, each destined to command one of the 20 legions of Space Marines that the Emperor was also in the process of creating. The creation of the Primarchs was a long and meticulous process. Every cell, every gene, was carefully manipulated and optimized to ensure that these beings would be the ultimate expressions of human potential. The Emperor used ancient technologies that had been preserved from the dark age of technology, combined with his own deep understanding of genetics and psychic power. The laboratories where the Primarchs were being created were protected by the most advanced wards and shielding, ensuring that none could interfere with the process. However, the warp is a realm of chaos, and the Chaos Gods had long watched the Emperor's actions with growing concern and hatred. They knew of the Emperor's plan to unite humanity and extinguish their influence over mankind. The creation of the Primarchs posed a direct threat to their dominion, for these beings, born of the Emperor's power, would be the champions of order and reason, capable of leading humanity away from the clutches of chaos. And so, the Dark Gods conspired to sabotage the Emperor's work. In a moment of catastrophic treachery, the Chaos Gods struck. Reaching out through the warp, they breached the protective wards around the Emperor's secret laboratories. In an instant, the gestating Primarchs were ripped from their incubation chambers and scattered across the galaxy. Each of the 20 infant Primarchs was cast through the warp, hurled across vast distances to far-flung worlds. They would grow up far from the Emperor's guiding hand, raised in isolation and ignorance of their true heritage. The Emperor's fury at the loss of his sons was immense, but he knew that the damage could not be undone. The Primarchs, however, were not lost forever. Though they had been scattered, their genetic resilience and the Emperor's foresight ensured that each would survive, growing to maturity on whatever world fate had flung them. The Emperor vowed that one day he would find them, reunite them with their legions, and bring them into the fold of his grand vision. Despite this setback, the Emperor's plans continued. Though the Primarchs had been scattered, the Emperor had already foreseen the need for a powerful army to execute the Great Crusade. While the Primarchs were still lost, the Emperor moved forward with the creation of the Space Marine Legions. These warriors, known as the Adeptus Astartes, were to be the finest soldiers ever created, and they would serve as the shock troops of the Imperium's wars of reconquest. Each legion was crafted from the genetic material of one of the missing Primarchs, using the fragments of their DNA that the Emperor had preserved before the Chaos God's intervention. The Space Marines were created in vast gene laboratories beneath the Imperial Palace, each legion molded to reflect the unique traits of its absent Primarch. The Emperor personally oversaw their creation, imbuing them with superhuman strength, resilience, and unwavering loyalty. The Space Marines were more than soldiers. They were the Emperor's vision made flesh, the ultimate warriors who would carry out his will in the stars. Yet, even as the legions were formed, the Emperor was not content to leave his Primarchs lost to the cosmos. He set in motion a plan to search the galaxy for his scattered sons. He knew that they had been flung to distant worlds, but he also knew that they would survive, for their bodies were imbued with his own genetic mastery. The Emperor believed that, in time, each Primarch would reveal themselves, rising to power on the worlds where they had been cast and making their presence known through their deeds. The search for the Primarchs would take years, but the Emperor was patient. In the meantime, he continued to expand his forces, forging alliances with the Mechanicum of Mars to secure the vast industrial power needed to fuel the Great Crusade. The Mechanicum, awed by the Emperor's vision and his mastery of ancient technologies, agreed to lend their support to the Imperium, providing weapons, starships, and the sacred knowledge of the machine cult. With this alliance secured, the Emperor's armies were equipped and ready to march. As the Great Crusade began, the Emperor led his legions across the galaxy, reclaiming lost human worlds and eradicating threats to the nascent Imperium. World after world fell under the banner of the Aquila, and with each victory, the Emperor's forces grew stronger. But the search for the Primarchs remained a priority. Through his vast psychic abilities, the Emperor began to sense the presence of his sons, scattered across the stars. One by one, they were found. The first of the Primarchs to be discovered was Horus, who had landed on the harsh world of Chthoniya. Horus had grown into a brilliant and charismatic leader, commanding legions of warriors in his own right. When the Emperor finally found him, he immediately recognized in Horus the qualities of leadership and loyalty that he had imbued in his son. Horus was the first to be reunited with the Emperor, and for a time, he was the Emperor's favored son. As the Great Crusade continued, other Primarchs were discovered, each on a different world. Each of these worlds had shaped the Primarchs in unique ways. On Baal, the Primarch Sanguinius had grown up among a savage, radiation-scarred people, yet he had risen to lead them with grace and nobility. On the death world of Barbarous, Mordorion had been raised in the toxic mists, learning endurance and resilience. On Makridge, Robot Guilliman had forged a thriving, disciplined empire. Each Primarch brought with him the lessons and strengths of his upbringing, and as they were reunited with the Emperor, they took command of the legions that had been created in their image. The Primarchs were more than just leaders. They were symbols of the Emperor's grand vision for humanity. Each represented a different facet of what humanity could become. The Emperor believed that with his sons at his side, humanity would be able to conquer the galaxy and establish a new golden age, free from the threats of alien empires, demonic influence, and internal strife. However, the scattering of the Primarchs had left scars. Though they were reunited with their father, the circumstances of their childhoods had shaped them in ways the Emperor had not intended. Some, like Horus and Guilliman, embraced their roles wholeheartedly, becoming paragons of loyalty and leadership. Others, such as Ongron and Lorgar, bore deep emotional wounds, haunted by the suffering they had endured before being found. These differences would prove to be a source of tension in the years to come, as the Primarchs, despite their loyalty to the Emperor, struggled to reconcile their personal experiences with the larger goals of the Imperium. The Primarch project, though it had been disrupted by chaos, was ultimately a success. The Emperor had recovered most of his sons, and with them, he now had the means to achieve his ultimate goal. The Great Crusade was gaining momentum, and the Imperium of Man was expanding across the galaxy at an unprecedented rate. The Primarchs led their legions into battle, each victory bringing the Emperor's vision closer to reality. But even as the Emperor and his sons conquered the stars, dark forces continued to watch from the shadows. The Chaos Gods, though momentarily thwarted, had not forgotten the Primarchs. They had sown the seeds of doubt and division in the hearts of some of the Emperor's sons, and in time, these seeds would bear terrible fruit. The Primarchs, though they were the Emperor's greatest creations, would also become the instruments of his greatest tragedy. With Terra united under his rule and the discovery of his Primarchs well underway, the Emperor of Mankind set his grand design into motion, the Great Crusade. This monumental campaign, the likes of which the galaxy had never seen, sought to reclaim the lost worlds of humanity, reunite the scattered colonies of mankind, and establish the Imperium of Man as the dominant power in the stars. The Great Crusade would last for over 2 centuries, reshaping the galaxy and leaving a lasting legacy on all who took part. At its heart, the Great Crusade was driven by the Emperor's vision for humanity. The galaxy was a dangerous place, teeming with alien empires, human warlords, and malevolent forces from the warp. Mankind had once ruled the stars during the golden age of technology, but the age of strife had shattered that empire, leaving humanity divided and vulnerable. The Emperor believed that the only way to ensure humanity's survival was through unification and the establishment of a single, centralized imperium that could defend itself against all threats. To achieve this, he would need to bring every human world under his banner, through diplomacy if possible, but through war if necessary. The Emperor did not undertake this mission alone. He had his legions, the Adeptus Astartes or Space Marines, genetically modified superhuman warriors who had been created to be the perfect soldiers. Each of the 20 Space Marine legions had been crafted using the genetic material of one of the Primarchs, and as the Primarchs were rediscovered throughout the Crusade, they took command of their respective legions. The Primarchs, towering figures of immense power and charisma, became the symbols of the Crusade's unstoppable force, leading their legions into battle and spreading the Emperor's vision across the stars. The fleet of the Imperium was immense, a vast armada of starships that carried the Emperor's forces to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Each fleet was commanded by a Primarch or one of the Emperor's trusted generals, and wherever they went, they brought with them the word of the imperial truth, the Emperor's doctrine that there was no God, no divine force guiding the galaxy, only mankind's strength and reason. The imperial truth was a rejection of religion, superstition, and, most importantly, the influence of the warp. The Emperor believed that if humanity could turn away from the corrupting powers of chaos, it could be free to chart its own destiny. The early stages of the Great Crusade were marked by a series of rapid and overwhelming victories. The Emperor's forces, bolstered by the disciplined might of the Space Marine legions, crushed resistance wherever they encountered it. On world after world, the legions descended from the heavens, striking like a hammer against any who opposed them. These initial conquests were relatively straightforward, with many human worlds welcoming the Emperor's forces as liberators. These worlds had long been isolated during the Age of Strife, and they saw in the Imperium a chance to regain lost knowledge, technology, and protection. But not all worlds were so easily convinced. Many had developed their own cultures, religions, and forms of government during their centuries of isolation. Some were ruled by tyrants, others by religious zealots or councils of oligarchs, and not all were willing to submit to the Emperor's rule. Where diplomacy failed, the legions were deployed. On these worlds, the Space Marines showed no mercy. Entire civilizations were annihilated if they refused to submit, their cities reduced to rubble, their armies crushed beneath the might of the Imperium. The Emperor had no tolerance for disobedience. His vision for humanity was one of unity, and those who opposed him were swept aside. The Primarchs played a crucial role in the success of the Great Crusade. Each of these demigods brought unique qualities to the battlefield, shaping the strategies and tactics of their respective legions. Horus, the first Primarch to be found, was a brilliant tactician and charismatic leader. His Luna Wolves Legion, later renamed the Sons of Horus, spearheaded many of the Crusade's most important campaigns. Guilliman, the Primarch of the Ultramarines, was a master of logistics and governance, and his realm of Ultramar became a model for how the Imperium should be administered. Other Primarchs, such as the noble Sanguinius of the Blood Angels and the grim Mortarion of the Death Guard, brought their own distinct approaches to warfare, each shaping the nature of the wars they fought. As the Great Crusade progressed, the Imperium encountered numerous alien species, many of whom posed a significant threat to the Emperor's vision. These Xenos empires, some ancient and powerful, viewed humanity's expansion with hostility. The Eldar, a dying but highly advanced race, saw humanity as a rising threat to their dwindling power. They were masters of the warp, able to manipulate its energies in ways that confounded the Imperium's forces. The Emperor, ever wary of the dangers posed by chaos, regarded the Eldar with suspicion, knowing that their connection to the warp made them particularly dangerous. Other alien races, such as the Orcs, presented a more straightforward threat. The Orcs were a savage, warlike species, spread across the galaxy in vast hordes. They thrived on conflict, their entire society revolving around endless warfare. The Imperium encountered Orc empires on many worlds, and the battles against these green-skin invaders were some of the bloodiest of the Crusade. The Orcs were crude and barbaric, but they were also brutally effective in combat, and their numbers were seemingly endless. The Space Marine legions, however, relished the challenge, and many Primarchs gained renown for their victories over the Orcs. Ferrus Manus, the Primarch of the Iron Hands, and Vulcan of the Salamanders were particularly notable for their campaigns against the Orc warlords, breaking their armies and securing vital worlds for the Imperium. One of the most significant and costly wars of the Great Crusade was the campaign against the Rongda, a vicious and technologically advanced Xeno species that had established a brutal empire in a distant region of the galaxy. The Rongda were utterly hostile to humanity, and their forces posed a serious threat to the Imperium's expansion. The Rongda Xenocides, as the wars against them came to be known, saw the deployment of several Space Marine legions in a series of apocalyptic battles. The Rongda were eventually exterminated, but the cost was immense. Entire legions were decimated in the fighting, and the toll on the Imperium's resources was considerable. As the Crusade continued, The Emperor's forces also encountered human worlds that had fallen under the influence of malevolent warp entities. These worlds had been corrupted by chaos, their populations enslaved to the dark gods of the warp. The Emperor had long known of the threat posed by chaos, but now, as his forces ventured deeper into the galaxy, the true extent of its influence became clear. Many of the Primarchs and their legions fought these corrupted worlds, eradicating the taint of chaos wherever they found it. Lorgar, the Primarch of the Word-Bearers, took particular interest in these battles, though his fascination would eventually lead him down a darker path. Throughout the Great Crusade, the Emperor himself often led his forces into battle. His presence was awe-inspiring, his golden armor gleaming as he strode through the ranks of his warriors, a beacon of hope and strength for his armies. In battle, the Emperor was an unstoppable force, his psychic power capable of incinerating entire armies or banishing demonic entities back to the warp. He was not just a leader but a living god among men, the embodiment of mankind's potential. His goal was not just to conquer but to uplift humanity, to free it from ignorance and superstition, and to guide it toward a future of enlightenment and progress. Yet, even as the Great Crusade achieved its victories, challenges arose. The scale of the Imperium's conquests was vast, and maintaining control over the newly acquired worlds required more than just military might. The Emperor entrusted much of this task to his Primarchs, particularly Guilliman, whose realm of Ultramar became a template for how the Imperium should be governed. Guilliman's organizational genius allowed for the efficient administration of hundreds of worlds, and his Codex Astartes, a treatise on military strategy and organization, became a guiding document for many of the Space Marine legions. Despite the successes of the Crusade, the Emperor was always aware of the darker forces lurking at its edges. The Chaos Gods, angered by the Emperor's defiance and the rapid spread of the Imperial truth, sought to undermine his efforts. They whispered to some of the Primarchs, sowing seeds of doubt, jealousy, and ambition. The Emperor, for all his foresight, could not see the full extent of their machinations, and as the Crusade reached its zenith, the first cracks in the Imperium's unity began to show. The Great Crusade had brought much of the galaxy under the Emperor's rule, but the work was far from over. The Imperium was vast and growing, but it was also fragile, dependent on the loyalty of the Primarchs and their legions. The Emperor knew that the next phase of his plan would require even greater sacrifices, not just from his soldiers but from himself. He began to withdraw from the front lines of the Crusade, entrusting its continuation to his sons while he turned his attention to the ultimate goal, the secret project that would secure humanity's future and free it from the influence of chaos once and for all. But in his absence, the seeds of betrayal had already taken root. The Primarchs, for all their loyalty and devotion, were not immune to the temptations of power and pride. Some began to question the Emperor's decisions, while others harbored deep-seated grievances. The stage was set for a conflict that would tear the Imperium apart, a conflict that would be remembered as the Horus Heresy. But for now, the Great Crusade continued, a shining beacon of hope in a galaxy still darkened by ancient hatreds and the looming shadow of chaos. In the years following the Great Crusade's successes, the Emperor of Mankind turned his focus to a monumental and ambitious endeavor known as the Imperial Webway Project. This initiative was born from the Emperor's understanding of the dangers of interstellar travel through the warp, where ships often fell victim to the malevolent forces of chaos. The Imperium needed a safer means of traversing the galaxy, a way to connect its vast territories without exposing itself to the unpredictable dangers of the warp. The solution lay in the ancient, arcane technology of the Eldar's Webway, a labyrinthine network of tunnels existing outside of normal space and time. The Emperor's knowledge of the Webway was extensive. During the Golden Age of technology, mankind had once explored its depths, but the secrets of the webway had long been lost to the horrors of the Age of Strife. To reclaim this knowledge, the Emperor required the cooperation of the Eldar, the enigmatic and ancient race that had crafted the webway for their own purposes. While the Emperor had maintained a wary respect for the Eldar, their history with humanity was fraught with tension and mistrust. Nevertheless, he believed that if humanity was to survive the coming trials, an alliance, albeit tenuous, was necessary. As the Webway project began, the Emperor assembled a select group of his most trusted advisors and adept psychers. Among them was Malkador the Sigillite, the Emperor's chief advisor and a powerful psyker in his own right. Malkador understood the intricacies of the warp and the dangers that lay within it. Together with a cadre of skilled scientists and technologists, they set about attempting to unlock the secrets of the Webway and develop a method by which the Imperium could navigate it. The Imperial Webway project aimed to create a series of gateways that would link various planets and systems within the Imperium. These gateways would allow ships and armies to travel instantly from one point to another, avoiding the perils of the warp entirely. It was a vision of efficiency and security, one that would solidify the Emperor's control over the galaxy. However, to accomplish this, they needed a deep understanding of the Eldar's technology, which had evolved over millennia. In the early stages of the project, the Emperor dispatched envoys to the Eldar, seeking their wisdom. The Eldar were reluctant to share their knowledge, wary of humanity's violent history and the potential for the Webway to fall into the hands of those who would misuse it. The Emperor's envoys returned with little more than warnings of the dangers of the Webway and cryptic clues about its construction. These were not enough to deter the Emperor, who believed that humanity deserved a future free from the chaos of the warp. Driven by determination, the Emperor turned to his own resources. He began constructing the first Webway gate on Terra, utilizing the remnants of ancient human technology combined with the knowledge gleaned from the Eldar. The construction of the gate was a monumental task, requiring vast amounts of resources, skilled labor, and psychic power. The Emperor personally oversaw the project, imbuing it with his own psychic energy to stabilize the gate's connection to the Webway. As the gate neared completion, the Emperor's advisors expressed concern about the risks involved. The Webway was a strange and dangerous realm, populated by creatures both alien and terrifying. It was also a place where the fabric of reality was thin, where the influence of the Chaos Gods could seep through. The Emperor, however, was resolute, believing that the potential benefits outweighed the risks. He saw the Webway not only as a means of safe travel, but as a powerful tool for expanding the Imperium's reach and influence. The first successful activation of the Webway Gate marked a turning point. The Emperor and a small group of his elite Adeptus Custodes entered the Webway for the first time, testing its pathways and ensuring its stability. The experience was unlike anything they had encountered before. The Webway was both beautiful and terrifying, a realm filled with ethereal light and shifting shadows. They navigated through the corridors of the Webway, marveling at its architecture while remaining ever vigilant for the lurking dangers that could spring forth at any moment. However, their exploration did not go unnoticed. The Eldar, aware of the Emperor's actions and the potential ramifications of humanity reclaiming the Webway, grew alarmed. They feared that if the Imperium mastered the Webway, it would lead to further conflict and devastation. In an effort to dissuade the Emperor from his path, the Eldar sent emissaries to warn him once more. They emphasized the importance of maintaining the balance between the material universe and the realms of the warp, cautioning that the misuse of the Webway could lead to catastrophic consequences. Yet the Emperor remained steadfast in his resolve. He understood the Eldar's concerns but was unyielding in his belief that humanity had the right to explore the cosmos without the constraints imposed by warp travel. The Eldar, frustrated by the Emperor's obstinance, began to take more drastic measures. They infiltrated the ranks of the Imperial forces, seeking to undermine the Webway project from within. They spread rumors and misinformation, attempting to turn the Emperor's own followers against him. As tensions escalated, the Emperor continued his work on the Webway Gate, pushing forward with the project despite the growing opposition. He believed that he could manage any threats posed by the Eldar or the dangers of the Webway itself. With each successful experiment, the Webway project gained momentum, and soon, additional gates were constructed across key Imperial worlds. These gates allowed for unprecedented speed in military mobilization and resource transport, making the Imperium even more formidable. Yet, despite the initial successes, the dangers of the Webway were becoming increasingly apparent. Disturbances began to occur near the gates, ripples in reality that hinted at the instability of the connection between the material universe and the Webway. Reports of strange creatures emerging from the shadows began to surface, and Imperial Psychers sensed a growing instability that made them uneasy. The Eldar's warnings echoed in the minds of those attuned to the warp, and it became clear that the Emperor's ambitions might come with dire consequences. In his unyielding quest to secure the future of humanity, the Emperor pushed forward, determined to master the Webway and solidify his vision for the Imperium. Yet the fabric of reality was beginning to fray, and the forces of chaos were always lurking in the shadows, eager to exploit any weakness. The Imperial Webway project, once a beacon of hope, began to take on a darker hue, foreshadowing the conflicts and calamities that were yet to come. The stage was set for a confrontation that would not only shape the future of the Imperium, but would also lead to the awakening of ancient powers long thought dormant.